Welcome, dear friends, to Cardiac Radio at 11 p.m., Nourishing Our Souls with the Spirit of Truth. This book that came to us in 1961, 20 years ago, 60 years ago. And today, we're relaying this to you in English, thanks to those who helped us translate. Today, Emmanuel comes to us with a message that is so important. Today, we celebrate Easter. And what is about Easter for us in Spiritism? It's a symbol of immortality. It's a symbol of Jesus' faithfulness to the divine mission, showing to us that death doesn't exist and renewal is always ahead, that the sacrifice we make will be paid off in renewal. So there's much for us to digest. But Emmanuel today, through the hands of Chico Xavier, is going to tell us about the importance of not creating idolatry. You remember, right? Moses at his time. And since ancient times, people creating idols of stone. And Jesus came and showed to us that God is above it all. Above it all. So where are we in that regard? If we see Jesus' passages, we're going to see that he himself never, ever put himself before God. He never asked anybody to create a cult around his personality. No. He always referred to saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So today, Emmanuel brings to us a message inspired in chapter 21, item 8. There will be false Christs and false prophets. How do we know? How can we distinguish, right? Good question. It's a good question for all of us. And in this very message here, Louis, in 1861, says to us, go forth, my beloved children, advance without hesitation, without ulterior motives, along the blessed course you have undertaken. Go forth without fear. Courageously distance yourselves from anything that could hinder your progress towards the eternal objective. And he goes on and says, therefore, press on, advance without ceasing. Let your banner be progress, continual progress in all things, until you finally arrive at the happy destination where all those who have preceded you await. The message is longer than this, but it's telling us about loving God above all things. Do we do that already? We cultivate this idolatry sometimes to certain spirits, to certain saints. And the Spiritism comes to us, doesn't discriminate us, doesn't judge us, but explains to us how fruitless that is. That's why Emmanuel today comes through Chico Xavier to say, without idolatry. He quotes Paul in 1 Corinthians 10:7. Therefore, do not become idolaters. And he explains. Are you ready for the educator? Yes, the manager of the project of this book, Emmanuel. He explains. Religious nuclei of all times, sometimes they have used idolatry as a fundamental tradition to keep alive the flame of faith and the warmth of the ideal. The habit has been so deeply connected to the popular spirit that currently in Christian Spiritist circles, sometimes we'll still find individuals trying to replace inert idols with flesh and blood companions of common experience when called upon to perform mediumistic responsibility. This way, it is vital to understand the inadequacy of idolatry of any nature, escaping, however, from iconoclasm and violence in the cultivation of respect and understanding in the face of other people's convictions, to serve in the mental liberation of others in the realm of good example. The apostolic warning comes to prove that the Christian doctrine, in its purity of foundations, arose in the Galilean climate, dispensing undue worship in all circumstances, due exclusively to human interference, the surpluses that were imposed on simple and natural exercise. So read your path of any idolatry or idolatry to objects or people, reaffirming the very emancipation of secular handcuffs that have been restricting the exchange of incarnated individuals with the kingdom of the spirit through the legitimate confidence. Today, we receive the task of applying in the edification of the disinterested good the time and energy we were wasting. Thus, before dead idols, in order to substantiate the religious ideal in progress and education, anticipating the realities of the glorious life. In mere, and we say quote unquote, 6 paragraphs, Emmanuel summarizes so deeply that we need to study more. Let me give you an example of what he's saying. I'm going to share the screen to show to you the latest issue of the Spiritist magazine. So you can go to spiritistmagazine.com or .org, and I'm going to share the screen. Okay, here it is. And you can even download the PDF or electronically, or even buy the printout that will be delivered to your house. In a beautiful article, and I'm going to show to you, this is such a beautiful issue. In a beautiful article that talks about oracle. Exactly, it matches everything we're talking about. Page 40. Teachings. Humberto de Campos, Brother X, talks about a different oracle. He talks about the beautiful story of 2 women who were talking. Joana de Cusa, of Cusa, and her friend, Tulia Prisca. They were talking about, actually, the friend was talking about mediums, sorcerers. And it's so interesting. She says he's one of the best oracles. And Joana of Cusa, who knew of Jesus then, she didn't believe those things anymore. So it's so interesting. We would recommend that you read this article. We're not going to spoil the fun of reading it. Please read it. It's a very interesting story because this woman has an appointment with Jesus. And just as a glance, in a glance, we're going to see how the dialogue goes. Tulia Prisca asked Jesus with disappointment, Lord, do you know Tissaphernes, the sorcerer who serves our home? And Jesus opened his lips in a loving smile and replied, there are diviners everywhere. Confused by the intelligent observation, Tulia feared a new gap of silence and added, I came here looking for your cooperation. What do you want from me? The master asked without affectation. My husband has deviated from my devotion. And, Mamma mia, she's talking about the husband. And she asked, what do you say to this, Lord? And Jesus replies. When pain is well understood, it becomes light for the heart. But as you can see, the message goes on and on and on, not too long though. And at the end of it all, she's going to say that Jesus is kind of a different oracle. It's in the Spiritist magazine, issue 53, page 40. And we share this with you to show the idolatry that to date we cultivate, sometimes to things or people, mediums. We as Spiritists, we often go to that route of creating a cult, worshiping a medium. Chico Xavier is a phenomenal medium. We're not worshiping him, but we are very grateful to his sacrifices. And Emmanuel, in his message, in the first paragraph, he says, we bring these habits, first and second paragraph, since ancient times. As scholars in Brazil who study Spiritism said recently, it's rare when you find people who are really Spiritists, like Spiritist, because usually we mix and match. And we think it's so beautiful to be eclectic, but we don't understand that there is no reason to do so. Because the universality of the teachings allow us to understand everything without creating a cult around any medium, any spiritual coordinator, or some expression that people use, spiritual leader. Who is the leader? Only Jesus is. None of us are. And in Spiritist groups, we need to encourage people to go beyond that attitude by Tulia Prisca, looking forward to a quick fix in her life. How many people come to Spiritist centers looking for a quick fix? And if they don't get it, oh, that center's not very good. They are not very powerful. Wow. So he goes back, Emmanuel goes back to Paul of Tarsus' warning, telling us about how Jesus never created a worship, a cult around him. Never, never. We are very grateful. He's our guide and model, but we worship God. First divine law. And why does it matter? You may be asking, why does it matter? Because he says here, we need to use our reasoning and think. Everything comes from God. We need to love God above all things with all of our heart, with all of our soul. And he finalizes this text, saying, we receive the task of applying the edification of disinterested good. Meaning, we don't calculate to do the good. Because God wants us to do the good always. I don't say, I'm not going to do good to that person because it's not worthwhile. Well, but that person is a child of God. That person, we are looking forward to this glorious life, as he says, and really immersing ourselves into this beautiful exchange, as Mimi said yesterday, the divine symphony of life. So you and I today are being asked to revisit who we are worshiping. It makes a huge difference in our lives. Look at Stephen in the book Paul and Stephen. He worshipped God and only God. He didn't fail. He understood that everything comes from God. You and I are being asked to revisit our relationship with God. It's going to make a huge difference in the choices we make, the way we feel, the way we think, even in tricky times in our lives, we're going to feel God's presence and say, I know you never forsake me. You never forsake anyone. Please help me love that person that is so hard for me to love. Please help me understand things that I project from myself onto that person. And that's the reason why I have an aversion, because I didn't accept that in me. So with God, everything is possible. We're going to be much stronger. Some people believe in superstitions, in esoteric things. If they don't have a stone or a candle or an incense, or they're not safe. But where's the safety? Mentor Joseph one day said, Vanessa, you know where is safe in this universe? Everywhere. Because everywhere God is. God is sustaining everything. So whomever you meet, come across, you are in constant interaction with the dynamics of God. So in the next 24 hours, you and I are being asked to march towards verifying our relationship with God. Is God the center of our lives? Are we worshiping God and only God? Do we love God above all things with all of our heart and soul? You want to share, Virginia, when you read it in the book Genesis, in the Bible, that says about loving God above all things? Remember? No, it's okay. I remember you showed it to me yesterday or today. Loving God above all things and not idolizing any stone or the golden calf. Remember, Moses?
Oh, I remember now.
Yeah. What was the lesson then?
Oh, and Elijah.
Yeah, you want to explain, please?
Yes. There's this episode in the Bible that is called Elijah and the Prophets of Baal. So Elijah, which is the last prophet of the Lord, because in Israel, the king and queen of Israel worshipped this god named Baal, and he wasn't true, right? Like
not a true God.
Not a true God. He was just carved from like stones. Yeah. False God. Then the prophets of Baal and Elijah, they did a competition of which God can cook the meat without fire. Mm-hmm. And then the prophets of Baal tried it. Did not work. But Elijah tried it, and he did work.
So the lesson is believe in the only God that there is, right?
The one and only.
Only God. The one that Jesus came to bring us closer to him, right? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing this. So in the next 24 hours, we're going to revisit our relationship with God. Do you think of God before you do anything? Do you? Yeah, we need to practice, right? Because God is giving us life. And why is he giving us life? There is a purpose. Every time I can ask, God, what do you want me to do?
He wants us to believe in him and make the world better.
Yes, with love, right? Like Jesus did, right? Mm-hmm. So in the next 24 hours, we are going to be revisiting our relationship with God. If we really bring God above everything, or if we are cultivating these worships to mediums, to people, or even to things, because if we do, we still have time to change it. We love being here with you, dear friends. We wish you lots of blessings. And until next time, God willing, let's be here at Cardiac Radio in a day and see how we feel. Because here at Cardiac Radio, we are always
nourishing our souls.
Thank you, friends. Bye.